Welcome to Echo Ekoji, the official monthly podcast of Ekoji Buddhist Temple, available on YouTube. I'm your co-host, Andrea Chapman.
And I'm Joe Gochi. In each episode, our goal is to bring you insightful conversations with members of our community and special guests to explore Jodo Shinshu Buddhism and how it shapes our daily lives.
Today, we are honored to welcome Reverend Marvin Harada, who has served as Bishop of the Buddhist Churches of America since April 1st, 2020. Bishop Harada holds a degree from the University of Oregon, go Ducks, and the Institute of Buddhist Studies in Berkeley. He's also earned a master's degree in Shin Buddhist Studies in Japan.
Bishop Harada grew up on a family farm in Eastern Oregon and attended the local Shin Buddhist Temple in Ontario. Prior to beginning his tenure as bishop, Reverend Harada served as minister at the Orange County Buddhist Church for 33 years. As bishop, he leads our national organization and oversees some 58 Shin Buddhist churches and temples, including our own Ekoji Buddhist Temple.
Bishop Harada, thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
We're wondering if you could share a bit about your personal journey into Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, what resonated with you, and what set you on the path to ministry.
Well, as you mentioned, I grew up in Eastern Oregon. My father was not a minister. We were just members of the local temple there in Ontario, Oregon. So I was a typical Dharma school YBA kid, not a very good student, never got a single perfect attendance award, and was more interested in Buddhism for the activities and being able to see my friends. In college, however, I had one of my best friends in college was a very devout Christian, and he always wanted to talk religion. And he's asking me questions about Buddhism, and I'm just this typical kid that grew up at a temple. I never really studied it before. I couldn't answer any of his questions. And, really, he was trying to convert me to Christianity. And so it sort of challenged me and made me think, well, what is Buddhism really for me? It's really just my family's religion. It's really not my own personal. And so I realized I really had no personal conviction in any religious tradition. And so it led me to really be more serious about Buddhism. And I started going to retreats and various seminars and things. And in that process came to really appreciate Buddhism and Jodo Shinshu, and then thought that I might be more cut out to be a minister than a farmer. So that's what led me down that path.
Very good. I'm going to ask you my toughest question right out of the gate.
Sure.
And I appreciate the fact that you're allowing us to explore a wide range of topics. So, in your opinion, what are the most critical challenges and opportunities facing BCA today, particularly concerning membership, the development of future leaders, and making Jodo Shinshu accessible to not just a younger generation, but diverse communities as well?
Right. So yes, one of my sort of focuses is to turn our membership decline around. We just can't continue going that way. But what we really want to do is we want to share the teachings. We want to share the Dharma. And if we focus on that, I think then we cannot help but grow. And so the reason why we want to share the teachings is we have so much to offer, and the world is very much in need of the Buddha Dharma these days. Just all the social issues that we face, the sufferings that people go through, whether it's an internal conflict, whether it's within their own daily lives. So Buddhism has much to offer people in the world today, and that's why we need to share it. And I think that's going to lead to our eventual growth.
Thank you.
Many people today identify as spiritual, but not necessarily religious. How would you introduce them to Jodo Shinshu in a way that resonates with their search for meaning?
Yes, I've heard that comment before. And see, to me, spiritual and religious is really one and the same thing. You know, I don't know how you could say, well, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. So when a person says they're not religious, I think they're saying, well, I don't really go to church or temple, you know, and so I may have a sense of spirituality, but I don't belong to any particular religion, and I don't go to any particular church, temple, or synagogue, you know. But to me, how can you really be spiritual without being connected with some kind of teaching, with some kind of Sangha or religious community, without really listening and hearing and receiving some kind of teaching? Otherwise, you're spiritual, but you're just at home and you're like a nightstand Buddhist. So I think, and I know there are many nightstand Buddhists, and I hope that they are led to finding a Sangha or community. And then they will find that spirituality and religiosity are one and the same thing that should become one with our life, to where we're not even thinking, this is my spiritual life, this is my regular life. Our spiritual life and our everyday life are really one.
Bishop, I think a lot of people during the pandemic who were nightstand Buddhists found a home,
Mhm,
whether it was Zooming with a
mhm,
service from
mhm.
Ekoji or from San Mateo or some other temple. And I'm just really thrilled that that's continuing. Uh, and I'll say on a personal level, whether it's at the Northwest District Convention last fall or
Mhm.
on Zoom, I always appreciate your Dharma messages.
Oh,
So, with all that you've taught, can you share with us one essential Buddhist teaching that you might share with the world? Why would you share it? And what impact would you want it to have?
uh, well, I think a real key to Buddhism and especially Shin Buddhism is the aspect of self-introspection, looking into oneself. The great Zen master Dogen says to study Buddhism is to study the self. And, really without that, we sort of miss something in Buddhism. And so I think that's it, really what our world and society needs today too, to always have that self-reflection, self-introspection. But of course, it's not an easy thing to do, and that's why we need the teachings, because the teachings are sort of a mirror that are it's trying to show us our inner self.
Excellent. Thank you.
Why is Jodo Shinshu Buddhism relevant in the 21st century, and how do you think the Dharma can enrich the lives of people who might be searching for the spiritual or religious path?
Mhm. I think because it truly is a path for anyone, really for anyone, exclusive of no one. See, so it means a farmer can follow this path, a businessman can follow this path. It's a path for either any gender. It's a path for any social economic class. It's a path for anyone in the LGBTQ community because we do not exclude anyone from that. But there are a lot of religions that really can't say that. I have actually the friend that turned me into Buddhism, the college friend that I mentioned in the beginning. He became a Methodist minister, and we got together a couple of years ago, and he was sharing with me the LGBTQ issue split the worldwide Methodist Church right down the middle. And the Methodist Church, part of the Methodist Church does not embrace the LGBT community or LGBTQ clergy. And, when we met, I said, well, it's not an issue with us at all. So there's lots of religions that can't say they are totally inclusive. And that's really our sort of one of our strong points, as well as being a lay-oriented form of Buddhism that does not require being a monk, doesn't require hours and hours of meditation, but it just requires listening to the Dharma. That's all.
For decades now, you've been propagating the Dharma and helping people like Andrea and me follow the path. So, What sustains your own spiritual practice and keeps you inspired to a lifetime dedicated to sharing the Dharma?
Oh, it's meeting people like you, and meeting people at all of our churches and temples. As a minister at Orange County, it was the membership there,
Yeah.
which meant both the lifelong members, but also the newcomers. So that's really what's most invigorating, and to see how Buddhism can transform people's lives. If I could, can I share one
Yeah,
specific example?
please.
So, as a bishop, I'm in charge of the Las Vegas Buddhist Sangha. So every few months I go to Las Vegas. See, it's hard, such a hard job to be the bishop. I have to go to Las Vegas every, 2 or 3 times a year. But on my recent visit, I met a new family there, non-Japanese American, and so husband and wife and 2 young children. And so during the coffee break afterwards, I'm visiting with this young woman, a new member, and she said that she and her husband tried every religion that you can imagine over the course of many years. They tried this religion, that religion. She said they tried everything, but never found a teaching that really resonated with them. But then her husband one day said, "Well, we haven't tried Buddhism. Shall we try Buddhism?" And so she said, "Okay." So they looked it up online. They found that the Las Vegas Sangha was like 10 minutes from their home. Hey, it's really close. Let's go check this out. So they went to the Las Vegas Sangha service. They meet twice a month.
Yeah.
She said the first time she went, when she entered the facility there, the Sangha Center, she sensed that she found her spiritual home. Even before the service started, even before she heard the Dharma message, she sensed it. And then, of course, the service and everything confirmed that for her. So, many people, they're searching for something. They haven't found a teaching that resonates with them, but some are. And that's really so gratifying to see that.
I think we're seeing that at Ekoji. And I
Uh-huh.
know that I've been attending services at the White River Buddhist Temple
Uh-huh.
in Auburn, Washington after the fire in Seattle. And we're
Hmm.
finding people coming through the door almost
Hmm.
every month with
Hmm.
similar stories. Thank
Hmm. That's wonderful.
I totally agree. And then having experienced that myself, I can tell you then there are moments later where it's revalidated and those
Uh-huh.
feel just
Right,
as good. Yes.
right, right,
Thank you for
right.
sharing that with us. So a little more challenging question next.
Hmm.
In
Hmm.
our increasingly complex and often divided world, what unique wisdom does Jodo Shinshu offer to those who might be grappling with the uncertainty, the suffering, and the search for meaning?
Yes, I know. I know the president, without getting political, the political climate has many people anxious. And, to me, if you look at it long term, if you look at the history of Buddhism, Buddhism has survived all the ups and downs, all the political regimes, the the rulers that were pro-Buddhist, the rulers that were anti-Buddhist, and the Dharma has survived over 2,500 years, despite all those ups and downs. So if you look at it in that sort of longer picture, I have no confidence that, I mean, I have the most confidence. I have no doubt that Buddhism will also endure the present political situation, and then that it will, continue to grow in this culture and the world. But all the more when we face anxiety, stress, uncertainty, that can be a sort of impetus for us to get even deeper into the teachings.
Excellent. So, if you could sit down with one historic Buddhist figure, whether it was Shakyamuni Buddha, whether it was Shinran, Renyo, any of the wonderful women who've been involved in the tradition, who would it be? What would you ask
Yeah.
and why?
Yes, that's a really fascinating question. Really, to be honest, the one person I would like to meet and hear a Dharma talk from is Reverend Haya Akegarasu. He was Reverend Kubose's teacher. And so, of course, he passed away in the I think the 1960s, something like that. I never had the opportunity to meet him, but I'm very fond of his writings in Japanese, especially because I studied under Reverend Kubose and of the many different Jodo Shinshu teachers and writers. I am really inspired by Reverend Akagarasu. So I wouldn't even want to ask him anything. I just would like to hear an in-person Dharma talk by him. Because when he would speak, his temple, like 500 people, packed, packed into this small temple in Japan. And I know he was quite the amazing teacher.
Thank you.
Mhm.
If we would have had Zoom then, you could have
Yeah, yeah,
listened.
that's
So
right. That's right.
so someone 500 years from now will be able to listen to your
Yeah,
talk.
That's
yeah.
right.
You know what's amazing about Reverend Akagara's time is they didn't have tape recorders and things. But his talks, someone is writing his talks verbatim in like Japanese, really quickly as he's speaking, and those were made into books. So they're really his talks more than his actual writing. It's really his talks that were transcribed as he spoke.
Very nice.
Mhm.
In an era of increasing political and religious division, how can Jodo Shinshu Buddhism help promote inclusivity and understanding?
Well, sort of like as I mentioned before, that's really kind of the core of our teachings. And so we can continue to share that in our churches and temples, and hopefully people find our churches, temples, and sanghas as a safe place where they can have some sense of truly being included, not only within Buddhism, within the greater world of wisdom and compassion, and hopefully that gives them a respite during the time of in which they might feel excluded, whether it's socially, politically, or whatever.
Thank you.
So it's been 125 years or more since Japanese began to immigrate to this country, and they brought with them Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. Uh, they are our temple ancestors, whether we are new to the tradition or heritage Buddhists.
Mhm.
So, how can BCA balance honoring its Japanese American heritage while embracing a broader, more diverse Sangha that reflects the changing face of Jodo Shinshu in America?
Well, I think the legacy Buddhists have a responsibility have a responsibility to warmly welcome and embrace the new people. And really that was one of the most astounding things that I saw at Orange County was the lifelong legacy Buddhists were the ones to talk to the visitors. I often share this story. One of our most devout members, after Reverend John Turner, when he first started attending, he just he'd only been there a few Sundays. She bought and gave him a copy of the collected works of Shinran. And at that time, it was like $50.
Yep.
And she just said, Here, I want you to have this. You're going to need it someday. You know, I mean, and he's like, Huh? You know, but we had wonderful lifelong legacy Buddhists that did that. We had another member that invited John and Linda Turner to their family New Year's party. You know, they'd only been coming a few months. Hey, come over to our New Year's get together on New Year's Day. So things like that,
Yeah.
and that really makes a difference. The newcomer immediately feels they're part of the Sangha, you know?
Excellent. Thank you.
For Japanese Americans, the current treatment of the migrants in America echoes the trauma of the incarceration in World War II internment camps.
Mhm,
How can Shin Buddhism help process these generational wounds while still fostering resilience and compassionate activism?
mhm. Yeah, it's kind of sad to see history repeat itself. And that's one of the things about, I think, our culture is that because we don't have this sense of sort of self-introspection, that history tends to repeat itself. And even when we had, 9/11 some years ago,
Mm.
right away people were attacking the Muslim community, and there was a Buddhist temple in Los Angeles. I think it was the Shin Temple. Right away they went to show their support to the Muslim community, and so, I think people can, in their own way, show support to other ethnicities, and so that we don't uh, have history repeat itself. And maybe we need to share our own personal stories of internment camp and things like that again, so that uh, our today's culture can be reminded of that actually happened. Yeah.
So earlier in the interview, you talked about the self-reflective nature of our tradition. And yet in this country, there's also this notion of social engagement,
Mhm, mhm,
social activism,
mhm,
perhaps.
mhm,
So is there a uniquely Shin Buddhist approach to engaged Buddhism, particularly when it comes to confronting injustice,
mhm, mhm,
misinformation, and
mhm.
perhaps systematic oppression?
Right, right. So that's the tricky part, to maintain that self-introspection as you're working towards that whatever social issue that you're trying to do something about. And I'll never forget, I read in a book by Pema Chodron, the Tibetan
Mhm.
uh, Buddhist teacher, and this is during the Vietnam War, and she's watching on the news a peace protest. So there's the anti-war group, there's the pro-war group, and they're at this demonstration. And so she saw an anti-war person pounding someone with their peace sign. And so what's wrong with that picture? See?
Yeah.
So you want to have peace, you want to stop the war, but you're doing something violent in your peace demonstration. See, that's the challenge. See, that's the challenge. So how can we be really engaged and doing something for some very valid social issue without our ego getting out there, getting out of control, and in a sense, causing more suffering than what we're trying to stop? See? And so that's what, sometimes ministers bring up this point, and the people that, no, we should be more engaged. We should be doing something about this issue, that issue. That's where I think many Buddhist ministers kind of see that. It's a side of themselves, which we kind of need to, I think, bring out and share too.
So we need to listen,
Uh,
we need to reflect,
right,
we need to live the Dharma.
right. Very good.
So, how would you suggest that we, listen and
Uh,
live the Dharma in addition to feeling gratitude, which is fundamental to our practice as well, but still have this privilege of feeling safe, but yet we're grieving the suffering that
mhm,
is happening around us. And so, of course, we don't want to fall into guilt or apathy. What
mhm,
is your recommendation for balancing all those facets of
mhm.
this current reality?
Mhm.
Right. So I think we do what we can, and we have an understanding of our own limits as a human being. There's something in Shin Buddhism called small compassion and great compassion. So great compassion is the unlimited compassion of an enlightened one, or of the Buddha. And we have compassion, but we have small compassion. See, and then our compassion is sort of discriminatory. Just to give you an example, if a ladybug lands on my arm outside, I go, "Oh, cute ladybug." But if I see a cockroach in the house, get the raid. See, they're both living
Yeah.
beings. But my discriminatory mind, I like the ladybug, but I don't like the cockroach. See? So if Shin Buddhism is trying to show us that yes, we have compassion, but it's limited and it's kind of discriminatory,
Mm.
and so we have to be aware of that. But even though we are that way, we do what we can. We do what we can, and we don't get a big head about it. I did this or I donated this much to this cause. We don't get a big head about it, but we sort of do what's in our heart and mind.
Very good. Thank you. So, as bishop during your tenure, you've championed the role of the arts in Dharma outreach. How have the music, art, film, and video committees impacted the BCA's mission? And what potential do you see for the arts to further spread the Dharma in our future?
Yes, it's already well, the music committee's already become the largest committee in the BCA and has members from every all of our districts. I think the art committee they do a wonderful art exhibit every year, and then that's going to show ways for people to express their spirituality through art, through music. The other area that's just getting started that you're going to hear more of is our task force, in which we're going to address Buddhism and mental health issues. So it's called Buddhism and Spiritual and Psychological Well-Being. We
Wonderful.
want to connect Buddhism. How can the teachings help people with various mental health issues today? Stress, anxiety, maybe mild sense of depression, uh, drug addiction, um, grief counseling, those kind of things. That's the other area that we're. I just had a meeting last weekend with this task force. I'm really excited about this and what it could potentially do to help many people in the long range future and connect Jodo Shinshu to people's everyday life's problems.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's great news.
So, Bishop Harada, I've heard you suggest several times that
Mhm,
in countries where Buddhism does take root, that
mhm,
eventually over time it becomes the dominant religion.
mhm, mhm,
How do you envision this might unfold in the United States, and what
mhm.
role do you think that the BCA might play in the evolution?
Right, right. So if you look at a map that shows the history of Buddhism, starting from India, to Tibet and China, I mean, when Buddhism goes into China, it has Confucianism, it has Taoism, but over the course of centuries, Buddhism becomes the major religious tradition in China. And the same when it goes on to Japan and all other countries. So I have no doubt that that's going to occur here in the West, even though presently it's 97% Judeo-Christian, that there will be a time when Buddhism is the major religious tradition here. Now, I hope that Jodo Shinshu and BCA will be a part of that. Will be a part of that. We don't know which school of Buddhism it will be, but I hope that we're a part of it. And when you look at that history of Buddhism, the ones that dropped off, like in Japan, there were many schools, but some dropped off because it didn't resonate with the people. See? So the Kiyomizu Temple, Kiyomizu-dera in Kyoto, Japan, magnificent temple, but it was one of the philosophical schools of Buddhism. So because it was sort of a philosophical school, it never reached the grassroots level. That's why it didn't continue. So I'm hoping that the BCA doesn't fall victim to something like that. That, well, it was pretty large for a while, but it didn't quite survive because it didn't connect with the masses, so to speak. So we have to find a way for our message to be shared more effectively and that it resonates with the people in this culture.
Well, this has gone by way too fast. We're down to our last two questions. The Dalai Lama has long been the most recognized living Buddhist leader. As he approaches 90,
Uh,
and he freely admits that he's not going to live forever, do you see another figure emerging as the global voice of Buddhism? And should the Gamonchu in Kyoto
Mhm.
take a more prominent role on the world stage as a leader of global Buddhism?
Mhm. Well, it'd be wonderful if our Gomonchu could take a little bit more of a role, but whenever the Gomonchu has come to the United States, and I don't think this is the Gomonchu's fault, but
Mm.
the Gomonchu's entourage, they're quite protective.
Yeah.
Quite protective, and they don't want the Gomonju to be put in any kind of embarrassing situation or to be, let's say, given a question that he is not able to respond to. And so whenever he has come, Honganji tells us no press conferences. And we say, hey, should we have a press conference? This is an opportunity to share Jodo Shinshu with the wider community. But they tell us no press conference. Well, what can we do then? See? So, but I have no doubt that there will be some kind of global spokesman. It might probably be someone who writes a bestseller about Buddhism that that receives worldwide notoriety, like the Dalai Lama has, or Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yeah.
It'll probably be a new Western-born Buddhist who is able to articulate Buddhism in a way that really resonates with the people. Uh, I, I have no doubt there will be a figure or figures like that in the future. I hope our
Yeah.
BCA and Shin Buddhism can have at least one of those figures.
Thank you. So do I.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Bishop Harada, we traditionally ask our guests what
Mhm.
Ekoji means to them, but for you,
Uh,
we'd like to
yeah.
ask you, what does the BCA mean to you?
Uh. Well, it really means all of our 58 churches and temples and our three Sanghas. The three Sanghas are Concord, Twin Cities, and Minneapolis, and the Las Vegas Sangha. So it's all of those local temples and churches and also our national organization that's trying to that unifies and leads all of our 58 churches, temples, and sanghas. And so it means all those members, the person that just visited last Sunday to the 99-year-old member that's been a part of that church or temple their entire life. So that's what the BCA means to me. And that how Shin Buddhism uh, helps them, resonates with them, and is their, in a sense, deepest treasure of life.
Beautiful. It's been an absolute pleasure and honor speaking with you today. Your leadership and dedication to the Dharma inspires us all, and we are grateful for the wisdom and guidance that you provide us, especially through the challenges of the pandemic and beyond.
Thank
As
you.
a Sangha member, I want to thank you for your leadership, your teaching, your storytelling, your Dharma talks, humor, and humility make a deep impact on us, and I always look forward to hearing them.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for offering this creative way to share Jodo Shinshu.
For our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Echo Ekoji. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit ekoji.org to learn more about the temple and our weekly services.
And don't forget to share this podcast with your friends and family. We're grateful for your support and encouragement.
We look forward to seeing you next month with another inspiring guest. Until then, take care and live a life of gratitude. Bishop Harada, once again, thank you for being with us today. Would you lead us in closing Gasho?
Okay, thank you. Naman notes, Naman notes, Naman notes, Naman notes, Naman notes, Naman notes.